All right, we're back.
Yeah.
All right, Trump, dude, this is crazy.
Yep.
All right, so much has happened in, I mean, just 2 days. It's kind of remarkable.
Yep.
But the inauguration ceremony, how much of that did you see?
So I watched from, so the Daily Wire was doing their live stream and commentary on it, like Ben Shapiro, Knowles, and all them. They started at like 9 a.m., I think. So I watched from 9 a.m. to like Trump started signing executive orders, so like 5 p.m.
Yeah.
So that's basically like I watched like the whole time.
I planned on getting up and just in the morning just camping out to watch it, and I was like, you know what, I'll get the updates, and so I just kind of watched from afar. But no, I saw all the highlights and the clips, and then just yesterday I was going back through and finding out more and more stuff. But man, so much happened just at that ceremony. It's crazy.
Yeah.
What do you think about Melania's outfit?
I thought it was good. I thought it was like class, right? Because like I even tweeted this out. I mean, you guys can follow us on Twitter. It's Sam at TOCP and Zane at TOCP. Or I guess not Twitter, X. But I posted like it's basically like going back, like the change that we needed, like going back to like these people have like attractive wives, like that. Like,
right.
Like it's not even that it's about them being attractive. It's like the America is attractive. And it's not like we promote the best of the best, right? So like if you look at every single one of his cabinet picks, they are like pretty people, and that helps.
Or just well groomed in the and
That's what I'm saying. Like they care about that. Whereas if you go back, it was everyone like they just woke up and they just whatever. And it's like that pride alone is like that person got ready today. That person took the time to like pick out their dress and like, or pick out their suit or whatever, instead of just like, oh yeah, I look like.
Well, I think right now, especially like we're in such a cool time where you can say a lot by how you dress nowadays and people will understand. You can send a lot of signals or a message without saying anything. And that's kind of what I think the whole Melania thing really was. And people are going to say it's this or that. What popped into my head immediately was you've been struck by a smooth criminal.
Yeah.
And like the fact that, they were trying to lock him up and do all this or whatever. It's sending a much stronger message.
I mean, a lot of people were talking about the movie V for Vendetta.
Right, I saw that.
And you could see on her face compared to clips of in 2016, like she was happy. And this, she felt like you guys ruined my life and now I'm back. Mm-hmm. And it was she's very like she's very calm and like meek, but you could read her emotions just off her facial expressions of like, man, she's mad. Like, but she's also like proud of her husband and like proud of her family. She's like
stoic though, you know?
Yeah. And the fact that like when they started swearing in Trump and JD, like that was America. That's what people know as America. Right. Your family is all there. It's everyone's family is there, right? It's like all the little kiddos, Barron, like everybody was there and it was so cool.
Yeah. Sorry.
And for me, like I almost cried when I saw JD's wife, Usha, looking at him when he was getting sworn in, because it's like the respect that she has for that man as her husband. And she's like, look at what my husband accomplished. Right. Because it's not like she married him because he was going to be president. She married him because she loved him. And now he's this like, he's the second most powerful man in the world. And it's like the look on her face was like, I'm on your team. Like you're my husband. It was to me, it was great. And like seeing Trump also with his family there and with Melania by his side, and he's giving her crap. He's like, your hat, you almost blew away in the wind. Just the flirting and like, it was just so like romantic and everything. And it's like, we've missed that.
It's authentic.
Yeah. It's like like Trump wasn't able to do that because they were attacking him in his first term. And then we lost him for 4 years, which I'm actually kind of glad that we went 4 years with Biden during that like chaos of COVID, because now it's like the full golden era of like, we don't have to mess with any of that now. So it's like, I'm so glad to be back, dude. Like,
absolutely.
It's been a great 4 days or 3 days already. It's been like,
I'm pumped, and I think everybody else is too. And it's just gonna keep going and going. And it's like we're picking up traction with everything. We've been talking about stuff for years, even in the last just 6 months, and now all of a sudden, within 1 week, we're getting so much going. And I mean, 6 months from now, really, especially if we get rid of the income tax and like all these major infrastructure changes to the U.S., like Our economy, eh, night and day difference. It really could be, and I believe in it. I've been invested in stocks just because I think you pick the right ones, and the economy will pick everything else up anyway.
Yeah, I mean, especially you see like the Saudis or the Japanese, and all these people are like, yeah, here's 500 billion, here's 200 billion just to invest in the economy. And it's like, I think Trump said, I could be wrong, but we can put it up on the screen, the actual number, but I think it was about $3 trillion in investments that the United States brought in just in those, like, the month leading up to now. Like, that amount of time, it's some
Because
crazy number.
they know, and they're preparing, and they're kind of on board because they know when America makes money, everybody else makes money.
Yep.
I mean, that's really just how it goes. At this point, like, we've always, called ourselves the leader of the free world or whatever, and it's so true, but we've sort of backed off that podium, and there hasn't been anybody to step up. And so that was going on for a while, pretty much my whole life. The first president I ever saw, the election for was Obama even. And
The one I remember.
Right. And I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, I guess Clinton was in office when I was born.
Yeah, I was thinking about
weird
that the
to
other
think
day.
about. But I always remember just Bush growing up, and then Obama was the first I was old enough to understand. But pretty much since then, my whole life, it's like we've sort of backed off of this power position of being, the real world leader, and nobody else stepped up. And then we've just had all this corruption go on that, like, the rest of the world, not just America, is ready for somebody to step back up. And I think Trump has built an amazing team. It's unfortunate. I don't know if you heard about Vivek. So he's kind of left the Doge.
He's trying to run for governor of Ohio. It's smart, though. I think his plan was like, okay, I'm going to shoot for the moon, run for president, knowing he's not going to get it. He got his foot in the door. People know who he is now. And then that way he can come into Ohio and everyone's going to be like, yeah, him. Because I think Vivek's like 38, 39 maybe.
He's a pretty young guy.
So it's like, if you think about it, he's positioning himself to be like kind of like a Gavin Newsom, in the sense of like he wants to put himself in the place where he can run. Because if you think about who's going to run next, it's going to be JD with possible Ron DeSantis as VP. Because for me now, it's like they shouldn't even run against each other. Like, because Ron's doing so good in Florida and JD is now the vice president with the experience. So it's like you're not going to bring in, there's no old people. Like, there's no old people that are going to be like, oh, I'm going to run. And no one's going to vote for him. Like, what's that, the chick who ran, I forgot what her name was. She used to be the UN ambassador, Nikki Haley. Oh. Like, she's not even going to have a chance now because people are going to see what this administration is. And if we can just get people in line for who's going to run next, it's going to be great. Because this is like a giant platform to like leap into the future.
Literally.
Because
the Doge efficiency, first of all, will become efficient, but then what are we gonna, how much we save off of that, putting that towards future investments and their actual development into where we're going. Yeah. And it's not the whys or the what ifs, it's like we're doing this and we're just gonna steamroll through it. There's gonna be issues and all sorts of things to come out of this, and the other side and the people that don't agree, they're gonna cause issues and strife between the progress. But you can't deny it at a certain point. Like, we're gonna make so much progress that we really just steamroll everything. And that might sound aggressive, but it is aggressive. It's like you need to be aggressive to get things done, and you need somebody to get things done.
Yeah, I mean, like heart surgery, you have to be aggressive in the sense of you got to cut it open, you got to move everything,
right?
You got to go find the problem. You can't just like
it's a whole procedure.
A 4-year procedure to look at someone's heart. It's like you have to go in and do that. So a lot of people are. There's like, I think,
it's a great way to look at
it. I think Trump's approval rating just came out. He's like 52% approval rating, which is like huge, biggest he's ever had. But people are starting to realize you have to go cut the fat. You have to be okay with this surgery that he's doing on the United States, because he has to spend a lot of money and do a lot of changes now. But 6 months from now, like you were saying, imagine where we're going to be based off everything that he's already doing. And I think the rest of the world also sees that.
They do. And, surprisingly enough, even like France is really invested in what we have going on. And, just politically, we kind of set the example, but there's so much corruption in our government that we've just let happen. But the rest of the governments, in the other countries, they have corruption just as much. And they almost know better firsthand of what the results are, because we we gloss over things and we reset things in America, so we don't always get the brunt of what that, we'll make progress this way, and then we'll just reset to this point instead of going, full circle to where we really feel it. We're just kind of going back and forth, right?
Yeah. And I think something that's interesting, hindsight, this is probably best case scenario for Trump because he got 4 years of experience of like how a presidency should not go. Like he picked a terrible team. Everybody was against him. He had to deal with everything, right? And then he spent 4 years re-campaigning after his presidency, 2020 through 2024, had to deal with everything. And now he gets to, like, imagine all the notes and all the planning and everything he did in 4 or 5 years leading up to right now. Like the amount of stuff that he's doing, nobody thought of. Like he's getting rid of all the DEI stuff, right?
I love that.
He literally said in the memo, like, oh, by the way, we're going to make sure that you guys aren't like disguising like yourselves. Like he basically is like, we've thought of everything. Like you're not going to like fool us, which is great because he literally was fooled for 4 years by his own team and everybody who he just thought was a good pick, but they were all like deep state. And now
we were all fooled with him
100%.
too. Everybody was.
So it's I mean, going back to like his inauguration day, just seeing like the step by step, and then he started signing all these executive orders, and like the whole like labeling the cartels as terrorists.
Absolutely.
And I was like,
and he declared a national emergency at the border.
Yep.
And he declared some other national emergency as well. But the actual effort and the labeling the threats for what they are and taking action and removing the buffer between these things that stops these things from actually working, right? People complain about ICE all the time and all this, whatever. Well, if you see the way that the funding is handling and like what's actually going on, it makes no sense. Like we're, holding people,
it's
for
like,
a long time. It's like, just deport them. We'll save money. They'll go live their life. It's like there's
for me, it also like
trim the fat.
It's like get rid of the cartel. That means Mexico becomes a great nation because they're not limited by the cartel, which means all these people can wait peacefully in Mexico, but then they also, maybe they just stay in Mexico because they're like, well, because the whole argument is like, well, Mexico just sucks as much as Honduras or Venezuela or where all these people are coming from. But imagine if we helped Mexico gain its footing again. Now it's like not everybody needs to come to the United States. You can also go to Mexico. You can also go to Canada. You can, if Trump helps...
Manifest Destiny 2.0.
Literally. And people are like, oh, he's deporting. It's like, there's a reason he's deporting, but also trying to fix the problem of the cartels. And it's not like he's saying, hey, we're not going to fix the rest of the world. Like you could see how he's trying to systematically break down all the garbage, throw it in the garbage disposal, and freaking wash the dishes. Like he's literally doing everything. It's great. I love watching it.
And the fact that we're named the United States of America.
Yeah.
When you really look at America for what America is, it's both North and South America. And to unify that whole thing into one sort of, whether it's, it might start with Mexico and whether that's one state or multiple. Like you're saying, if Mexico really got its footing, it would be what Mexico is to us now. Then, these southern countries will become the new Mexico.
Yeah.
And we just keep it going until it's Canada down to the tip of South America. And then that's half of the world right there in one sort of connected landmass, essentially. And you really can't beat that. You can't do anything other than that. So then it sort of forces where we export the savagery. And so it kind of has to go to the rest of the land, right? It's like you start closing in the borders of, what's allowed, and just like their space is over there. Mm-hmm. And so if you really want true freedom, it's like you could be able to, it would be nice to interact and mix cultures in a certain proper way. But when we try to, I don't know, just let everybody erase or write over what anybody else has done before and correct each other's, it doesn't make any true progress. So
yeah, we're going back to normalcy. And I think the rest of the world is understanding like, we all miss that. We want to go back. And I mean, so.
And the politics are back in the people's hands. Like true civilization and society is back.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing that I've noticed.
Yeah. I mean, I think just the entrepreneurial mindset a lot of people are going to start taking chances and risks because of deregulation and just job growth in general. Like forget about starting your own business. Just imagine the opportunities with like Elon's doing with like going to Mars. Like there's a lot of jobs in wanting to do something like that. And that was cool that Trump said that like he was signing, did he sign an executive order? Like, or no, he didn't. He was just talking in his inaugural speech about sending somebody to like Mars or whatever,
Right.
which is like crazy to think about, which is cool because it's like, those are jobs, you know? And then he starts talking about like putting military on the border, which means you're going to need to have recruitment for the military, which is jobs. You know, you're going to go after the cartels, which is going to give people the faith in the military to see. Because imagine sending spec ops and just taking out cartels. It's going to give people the confidence knowing that, oh yeah, the United States military does kick ass and they're going and doing these things. So like the confidence in the economy is like going to go up.
Well, you know, one of the issues with cartels, specifically Mexican, is that they're trained by American operators, and so that's like
What are they called? The mercenaries? Yeah.
I forget specifically what group in America trains them, and exactly how that works. I was just looking at this.
BlackRock?
No. It's not that deep, but there's an elite fighting force in the U.S. that somehow trains the cartels, like the Sinaloa and the other one. I'm blanking on the details.
Is it the military? It's not the military.
It is like the military, but it's more of like a, is it the FBI or the CIA's like through dealings with them. I'm probably butchering the whole thing, but somebody look it up, and it's like, you know, they get their training from us and their understanding of tactics and what we're doing and inside information about how we operate. And there's like a clear pipeline of information, but also direct training that we're giving them essentially. And so
it's smart though if you think about it.
If you label them a terrorist, now we can't deal with them in any political sense, so we have to shut that off. Now we shut off their training, their source of information, these sorts of things. And then when we actually mobilize, you know.
But we know how they're going to respond because we've trained them.
Yeah.
It's like if you train your kid to run around your house, right? You know where to find your kid if he's going to run around your house because you trained him to do that. So it's almost like we've trained you, but we know how you're going to act because of your training. So it's almost one of those things. It's like we have them just where we want them.
We do, but they are an elite fighting force.
But there's not millions.
To a degree.
There's not millions of them, right? Like, yeah, I'm not going to send 3 Spec Ops Pro, like Delta members in because they just get killed. But
I could be wrong, but I think it's more of it's a controlling, like, there's the actual cartels, which are, you kind of have to be in the bloodline to be literal cartel, but then they employ a bunch of people, and so they're just hired people that are not loyal.
I see what you're saying.
That's the majority of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
But if you took out the real cartels, everything else will come. Mexico entirely will be for the taking, essentially. But we'll protect them, do the right thing, step in, and help them out. You know?
Yeah, true. And obviously the fentanyl trade, they're trying to get rid of that, which is great. Like obviously you don't want any of that coming into the United States, and
sure don't.
But yeah, dude, I'm like just seeing. I saw something on Twitter. Some guy was like, "I hate Trump. I love Biden. You're not going to deport me." And it's like, this is great. Like seeing somebody actually getting arrested and deported because they're a criminal. Like whereas the past 4 years, you're like, man, I have to stay strapped. I'm worried about my family. Like, because people are just getting away with freaking literal murder. And now people are just...
Oh, they are. They absolutely are. And you might be surprised. Some people out there would be surprised to find out how much murder goes, you know, without any sort of investigation or anybody batting an eye at it. And how much we fund all this. You know, how many times do you get pulled over for something stupid? They're wasting your time. And that might just be your local police department's budget, you know?
Yeah.
But the fact that they have gotten the allowance to have extra budget. I live in a somewhat nice area, and it's like the crimes here in this area. I'm specifically talking about this city that I live in, but the crimes here are not so bad. But the amount that these officers are getting paid, and of course, just being an officer in general is not good now. But the amount that they're getting paid compared to a close by city that has real crimes, and then where that money ends up going realistically, it's on wasted patrols, bothering people, nuisances, and then even when they do encounter something, they're not trained, and so they might be getting, that's a proper justification of where our money's going, but that's like a once every year or once every 6 months, or how often are our dollars actually going towards the training in our community? And if we somehow with this Doge efficiency just rework the system, we could keep police. We don't have to defund them whatsoever. But we can change how we fund them and where it goes. And then, just completely monitoring and keeping things neutral across the board. Like if there's more crime in an area, they probably need more help, right? And so if you go to an area that has crime and you actually help it out, then the surrounding areas benefit. And it sort of becomes a game of whack-a-mole, right? Like the crime will move around, it'll hide. We have to play whack-a-mole so much that they just leave the country.
Yeah.
There's no other option, right? We export crime. That's all we do.
Yeah. And like you were saying, like the government efficiency doesn't just mean cut all spending. It means you get your money's worth.
Right.
Whereas like they're spending millions of dollars on scholarships from people from other countries where it's like, hey, if you take those millions of dollars, you don't have to get rid of those millions of dollars. Just invest it to something that makes sense to where you're going to get a return on investment. And I think that's the whole point of Doge is like, yeah, you can save money, but at the same time, we can reallocate resources to where they need to be.
And I think it's about getting unstuck as well. Like, how many people have been, broke and you just don't have the money to change your environment or your situation? That's the country right now. We just need a reset and a change of environment, and just the principles that we operate on.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, we left the WHO, the World Health Organization,
and the Paris Climate Accords.
Right. Like we're starting to make the right steps to really stand strong on our own,
Yeah.
and show Europe and just specifically Europe that we kind of don't need them. They don't understand what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it out.
They just make clubs and they just think they're important because they're in these clubs like Davos.
Right.
They had that thing and Trump went on and was like, yeah, you guys all suck.
Yep.
And it's a wake up call for countries to be like NATO, for instance. Like if Trump was like, hey, we're going to leave NATO, all these countries are heavily reliant on the United States in so many ways, but they take so many ways for granted that if we do step out of these organizations, it's like, yeah, that club didn't mean anything in the first place. Like the WHO, it's like, yeah, there's a World Health Organization to try to help contain disease and all this stuff. But if we step out and say, yeah, we're going to continue doing our own research, but we don't need to be a part of your group, everyone else is going to start realizing, yeah, we'll just do the research too. We don't need to be part of this group.
Well, they're trying to basically make they're the authority on something when it comes to the research, but then they're almost trying to police that authority to everybody else, which is not your prerogative, to be honest. And especially, NATO, Davos, and the WHO. Yeah. Those are like the three big groups that really try to, I don't know, just pull on our coattails and I don't know, divert our attention and make us feel like we have to be part of this thing. We're across the water. Like we have nothing to do with you. Realistically, we have nothing to do with you.
Because everything there is different. Like for instance, they don't have freedom of speech. Their immigration laws are different. So it's like, the way that their societies run in terms of like health is going to be different than ours. Because let's say that everybody over there smokes 10 packs of cigarettes a day. In America, we don't do that. So automatically health is going to be different just because of your lifestyle over there. So they are trying to enforce their lifestyle of health onto how our lifestyle of health should be.
Right.
Where it's like, that shouldn't be the case. It should be like, we all share information about maybe helping people understand, like I was talking about diseases and understanding that science, but we don't all need to be ruled under the same health measures because everything's different. Like over there, they don't have red food dye or whatever, and we had it forever over here. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's so many differences to where we don't all need to be on the same page.
I think they're so compartmentalized because Europe is so fractured in all these different countries with completely different, histories and whatnot, that they're so compartmentalized and only focused on what's going on in their country that they're willing to listen to this as long as all these other countries are still abiding by this. And then they want to get mad at us because we're the one country that doesn't abide by this made up thing that makes them feel better essentially about being this small country because they can feel unified without having to be unified. Whereas over here, we are one. We just like you can't disconnect us. Even with the states and whatnot, it's all one country. It's all one goal. What happens to one state will slowly trickle to the others. Like it's a big game of telephone over here, and we're not compartmentalized, so we know what's going on. And then I think that's where people like France and even New Zealand also, and Australia too. Like a lot of these countries, there's big populations in them that just, I don't know, they empathize with us. They know exactly what the end results are. And, our corporations seep over there too. So they see the good and the bad of what we have, and then they know the good and the bad of what they have and what goes on over there. And they can see from way over there through all of this smoke and mirrors, there's hope over here. There's a possible future. So I don't know. I'm just excited on that. I think everything's just coming together slowly.
Yeah. I think we talked about this last episode too, but like how they should just get rid of NASA.
They do.
And just fund SpaceX. And I think there are plans, what I saw on X, but there might be some plans to just get rid of it because you could just take that money. I mean, speaking of Doge, like if you're just building rockets to send up and take photos, might as well just merge the technology with SpaceX and subsidize what a private company is already doing, and you just save billions of dollars that way. I mean, it
makes no sense for them to build their own rocket.
And speaking of like allocating money, like Trump just gave a bunch of money to North Carolina because of all the stuff that they're still dealing with post hurricane, which was like months ago. So it's like all that extra money could then be divvied out to the areas that we need it, and it's so great to see what he's doing.
Yeah, it really is. The so the birthright citizenship gone.
People don't understand. Like I saw so much stuff on X. People have a vague misconception of what that is.
They do.
And the biggest thing, I saw somebody post something that said, "Oh, because Melania is not a U.S. citizen or wasn't born in the United States, that Barron now isn't a citizen." And it's like, if there's a parent who is a United States citizen, that child gets immediate citizenship. But the idea of birthright citizenship is if I'm an American citizen and my wife is flying over Germany and has a child on the airplane, therefore that child is a citizen of Germany. Like that's the whole argument. It's like we don't want that.
No, but you have a parent, like, because you would be a U.S. citizen, or you're a U.S. citizen, your son being born in Germany. I mean, specifically, it's more talking about sneaking into the country and being born here on our soil.
Correct, without being a citizen.
No, but that would make you a citizen is what was going on before. Now that is no longer a thing.
Correct, but I'm saying like it doesn't matter. Like if the argument I was seeing on X was, okay, if I'm an American citizen but my wife is not, but that now my kid doesn't get to be. It's like that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about if neither parent is a United States citizen, that child doesn't just get to become a United States citizen.
Right.
And so that's what's so important, is because people are just coming over the border and they're saying, "Oh, boom, here's my baby. Now my baby is a citizen and I have to be with my baby. So therefore I have to be amongst this citizen." And it's like getting rid of that is also going to help people not rush to the border, because it's like their idea was, I'll just go over, I'll get married, I'll have a green card, I'll get citizenship, whatever, or I'll my child will XYZ, like, because then you start adopting kids just to get citizenship. So it's a great idea that he did that to get rid of it.
And that's a good point, because it really is just it's a loophole that we basically give them welfare.
Yeah.
And the welfare is for, real American citizens. But when that line gets so long and we have so many people at the border and they're all trying to come through, that's the incentive. If we took that away, it's like, what would be the only opportunities to come through? If you're smuggling something, you have some sort of business or something, and that's more high risk. And when there's less people at the border, you don't have as much cover, right? It sort of weeds out all the problems. And we don't, we like immigrants. We like when people come over properly, come through the right channels. And a good immigrant story, that's the American story. Like, we were all immigrants. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
But we did it the right way. So you have to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And
I started thinking about this, like in regards to the border, like drone technology on the border is going to be amazing.
Huge.
Because if you have fleets of drones that pick up somebody, cool, drone flies and just hovers over them. Because the drone can have thermal, infrared, and it just sits there and sees you. You can't hide from it. And then Border Patrol can just come up and be like, yep, there you are. Because imagine if somebody crosses the border and now they're running and they're hiding, drone's still on them. So it's like, I think the amount of technology and the stuff that they're going to be doing on the border is going to be really profitable, because like it's going to force people to go stand in line, wait their turn, get documented,
Right.
and come in. Like Trump isn't saying, hey, if you have a visa, you are getting deported. He's saying like everyone needs to get their documentation and then come in and work. Like that's fine. Like he said, like come in, but you can't just be here, break the law, come in, and then expect to get treated like
You can't cut the line and then be entitled.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work. And the people that have worked hard to get through that line and the real immigrants, they're not happy about the people that are sneaking through. I've talked to several immigrants from a wide variety of countries that come here the proper way, and they're almost all like passionate about, the U.S., the Constitution and the proper channels. And it's a beautiful way that we have the opportunity because we've set it up properly.
Yeah.
Just for somebody to try to destroy the opportunities that we've built, essentially,
Yeah, I like same as you. I've worked with people that are immigrants, like from Mexico, and they're like, I don't like these people coming over illegally because I spent 14 years working hard, coming over, getting my visa, and now I finally have a citizenship or whatever because they took the time to put in the effort. Because now when they have kids, boom, your kid's a citizen because you did it the right way. But these other people, they're ruining the experience to chase the American dream. It's different if we said, hey, no one's coming in. That'd be hard because now no one has that shot to prove themselves. But there is that opportunity where you can come in and you can work. I think that the Senate or the House should do something that opens up that door for citizenship. Like if you can prove that you're, not a criminal, and you can prove that you're going to work hard and you're going to pay your taxes, like there should be a route of like time of whether it's like 10 or 15 years or something where you can prove it and get citizenship. Like there should be some way that people can try to achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough just because it's like already started on the wrong foot, and that's a loophole to correct something that we already shouldn't have let happen right? It's like they shouldn't have been here. They should have gone through that line.
I'm not saying the people who are already here. I'm just saying the people who show up and do it the right way, they should be given a path of like, this is how you go about it if you do it the right way.
They need more resources and a proper projection of what
I'm
that
not
looks
saying
like.
if you're already here illegally, here's your loophole to get through. I'm saying like if you have,
you got to go start from the beginning.
You got to go to the back of the line. And I'm saying if there's somebody who's like, you know what, I want to be an American citizen, here's your path to citizenship. And then they can start from the proper channels and get vetted and do everything they need to do. Like, and boom.
Opportunities, like military opportunities for, let's say if you were in a foreign military and you want to become a U.S. citizen, there should be a military channel for you to go through to essentially, let's say, okay, serve 8 years, but it's not just going to be a typical, there's a specialized contract for these people. And, it's dependent on completing these things. And I would say, college degree is included in there and certain things that will really help them establish themselves when they come out of the military. But getting people into our country with the incentive of one, helping us and contributing from the beginning, but also in trade, we're going to help you out and establish you. It's not you're on your own, right? Because a lot of people do come in this country. It's confusing, right? I can imagine if you've, grown up in China or something all your life and you come here, it's so confusing, right?
Yeah.
But completely backwards.
The issue, though, with giving people that help is like here in the United States, there isn't that opportunity for us to get help as citizens. Like, let's say I'm struggling in debt or something like that. I can't go to the government and say, hey, help me out, give me a way to get out or achieve this goal. But it's like I'm cool with the whole immigration thing, but we should give people that same opportunity with like if you're homeless or if you're in tremendous amounts of debt or stuff like that. Like, there should be a way for us to get out of that situation. I know Trump has talked about before, like limiting the amount of what's the word called, like the APR or the interest rate on like credit card payments and stuff like that companies can charge, like trying to help people get out of debt and stuff. But I think that the United States should look for opportunities or create, kind of like Doge was create a department to help people get out of these bad situations. Help them look for jobs and stuff, because it's hard. Like if you're like made a mistake and you have a felony from like 12 years ago, sometimes it's hard to get a job and stuff. But if you find these routes and opportunities and take care of United States citizens first, it then makes it easy to go and look at immigration and help these people gain some sort of citizenship. Because it's like, if you put all this focus on helping people gain citizenship, but you're not helping your citizens, it makes it, that's why a lot
It
of
sort
people
of looks like, the company that's not concerned about the quality of their product. They're just trying to sell as many as possible, and they don't really care because, if we really cared about the quality of our citizens in the first place, then we would care about, adding extra quality citizens. There'd be more incentive, and people would be, I don't know, allocating their own money to grow. If we have skilled individuals from other countries, it's like we want those people over here, so we're gonna put funds together to make a program for that. And if we chose where our tax dollars went, that's another example of we'd be doing those things, right?
Yeah.
So I think people are big complainers when we have zero control and that's all we can do is complain. But like, give us a little bit of control over something. Like, we're not complaining anymore. We're doing stuff. You've just hired everybody.
Yeah.
With their freedom. And it's pretty simple, actually.
Yeah. Something else that's been nice hearing Trump talk about is he wants to bring manufacturing back to the United States.
Yeah.
Which again is just jobs. Like, especially if you're a kid who's 15, 16, and you have these plants that are open, right? Or these manufacturing jobs, what an opportunity to not have to worry about going to school, but getting in and learning how to do a trade, because all these regulations are gone. All this stuff is going to be needing to be built and infrastructure. So imagine like you're young and you could be like, oh man, in 2 years, like if all these things have been developed, I can step in to that and help build this infrastructure, especially with AI, all this electrical infrastructure they're going to have to start doing. I mean, we saw how much money just got put into AI over the weekend. It was like almost like $1 trillion. But like, imagine all that infrastructure that's going to have to be built out. People are going to have to get trained, jobs, and it's like, that's super cool.
Yeah. I think, there's always those like high school trade programs or stuff like that. But those were such disappointments, and how little those actually panned out for anybody. It's kind of ridiculous. Maybe if you were, it's like if you were going to trade school to be a welder or, just one of the basic like 5, those work, but there's no other opportunities. There's no current opportunities. There's no opportunity that will attach you directly to the future of what we're building, right? Like we need a direct pipeline of young people into skills, into labor, but that's skilled labor. And it's, we're empowering them at the same time, teaching them those skills. So there's unity, there's power, and we have a controlled focus and workforce on creating the future. And whether that's, coding is huge. I think that's the baseline. All high schools really should be teaching code, but coding, AI implementation, just data, pretty much anything technological. Like, you can't deny that that's the future at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it also pushes the idea, if we want this amount of entrepreneurship and development and growth in our country, you need to motivate, inspire people to get into these types of jobs. And it's like, let's say a kid's in high school and they're a freshman, and you say, hey, if you get into FFA or like farming or whatever, there's going to be a job waiting for you after you graduate high school, right? And it's going to pay you $50,000 a year or something like that. So that way the kid is going through knowing, okay, I'm doing this because I get a job after. Or like electricity, like same thing. But that's what's hard about high school is like they're not putting you on a pedestal, getting you ready for that real world. It's kind of just like, oh, we're showing you stuff you might like, and then once you graduate, you just get to choose.
But I think it's a little bit of we need better opportunities and more, proper channels for young people. But the other thing is all of the existing channels we got to talk about these. We got to expose how bad and deceiving
Yeah.
all of these things are to the youth, right? If you're 80, you know it's bad. You know it's all hogwash, right? It's all junk. But as a kid, this is all exciting. It's new to you. You're naive and you're easily deceived. And somebody in the industry, just like a military recruiter to a young kid, it's like you're just going to mold them into whatever. But they don't know what they're being molded into. They don't know what the end result of this is. They don't know what it really looks like. And in an industry like trucking, for instance, there's a lot of big promises out there, huge promises that'll get a kid to completely change their course of their life, to just go, I'm going to do this. And they jump into it. And then a year or 2 years later, they realize this pay is not what I was promised. And now I'm a trucker and I'm stuck with that. They feel like that's their identity, and they wasted their time to learn a proper skill, or, they maybe just didn't even have all the options in front of them because they felt like all the options were bad. And this was the least bad one, right?
Yeah.
But all the things, it's kind of malicious how we try to deceive the youth, I think. Big corporations and industries.
Yeah. So out of all the executive orders that were signed, which one is your most favorite to think about or interested in?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good ones. We did talk about a lot of good ones, but something personally interesting to me is they're getting rid of like the emission standards. So essentially, you could, if you have diesel, you can take your filter off, which is the issue with my car right now. So I'll just be excited to just be able to take that thing off. It can breathe, and it'll run better than it ever has, But it's just a bunch of stupid regulations. That was cool. Of course, I love the Gulf of America thing.
That was so great.
And the rest of the world is kind of refusing to.
That's okay.
Like, I think Britain said, we're not doing that, but we don't care. So we're renaming Britain now. We've decided. I don't know what I like best yet, but pre-America, I don't know.
Are we really?
Old America, something.
That'd be funny if Trump did that. Just like,
it'd be great.
Rename everything on the map to what we want to call it.
I'd love it. I mean, because it kind of is up to us what we want to call everything, because other countries call us different things. They call each other different things depending on what country you're in. It really is up to whatever country. So if we kind of set the standard as well.
Yeah. I think the Gulf of America, though, he did it for drilling purposes.
Legal purposes, which power move. That's great.
Yeah, chess. Everyone's been saying chess, not checkers. But it's, I thought that was great. But it's also one of those things where he has been thinking about that probably for so long. And that was such a, like, out of right field. Like that one day before he was president, like sometime in December, he just started talking about stuff that he was going to do. And it's just like, that's great. Because as Biden, like, you can't, what's he going to do? Go rename? Because you can't say in legal documents, you can't say, hey, no drilling in the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, because the Gulf of America doesn't exist.
And you can't go back.
Yeah, so he would have to, like, name it the Gulf of America, but you can't have two names. You can only have one name. So anyway, I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, he can't do anything about it.
No,
you literally can't do anything.
It really is great. I like the idea of, like, there's been a bunch of invisible rules that we've been living by for a long time, and it's just like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. We don't want to do that. We don't need to do that, right? It's like all these extra precautions for us to be extra safe. They're marginalizing our growth like no other,
Yeah.
That January 6th pardons, that dude with the with the horns. He was on Twitter talking about his lawyer sent him a confirmation on that. It's cool to see actually something happen though, because
I mean, there's
been a long road for those guys.
A lot of those people. I mean, I know he did commute some of the sentences of the people that were violent, right? If there was people that were doing violent stuff, it's like, just because you disagree doesn't mean you can go hit a cop or be violent. Like, and I agree with that. Like, there's rules for a reason, but
like a literal gaslighting psyop.
Yeah.
That,
like there was people
you're being lulled into, that's entrapment.
Yeah. There was people that were like, did nothing. They just went and walked around inside. Like they didn't riot. They didn't yell. They just walked around, and then they got put in prison for years, and now they get let out. And I thought that was great. Like
when the police are letting you and
there's
escorting
videos.
you and
literally,
there's so
many videos showing them like, oh, come this way.
It would be ridiculous not to believe that you are being allowed.
PSYOP, yeah,
like 100%. And like we've seen people get shot for much less, right? And so for these cops to be so nonchalant and escorting people around and all this, it's like, oh, we're super good. We're super good.
And the only person who died was a protester. Like no cops died, like, or
Right.
anything like that.
And it's like, yeah, those people showed up, but they didn't bring rifles.
Yeah, literally.
Like, what are you talking about?
That's the one thing that cracks me up is like if there was a group of people that were extremists that actually wanted to do damage, they wouldn't have come without anything. They would have been wearing plates. They would have been bombs, grenades, like stuff would have went down. They
It
would
would have
have
been a little bit more like that Civil War movie that
yeah.
sucked.
There wouldn't just be like. That's why it's if you look back at the videos, it's hilarious. Like someone is just walking up and just like wants to put their feet up on Pelosi's desk because it's a troll. Like you can't be like, I'm gonna put you in prison for 4 years because you did that. It's like, yeah,
That's very England.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're not posh. Anyway,
No, I just mean arresting you for a meme, essentially. You know.
yeah, I mean, and people, you could look at what happened with Chaz in Oregon and how they took over and burned down that, is it a courthouse or burned down some government building? It's like none of those people are going and getting like, look at the BLM riots and the amount of property that was burned down. Like those people aren't in prison for, whatever. They're just no one. So that's the thing with me. It was like, it's just a giant psyop. It was just a political move. Let's just put these people in prison. So it's cool. It was cool to see the videos too of them getting out.
Right.
Like the mother's there with her son and it's like, I love you, Mom. Like that, to me, that was like so cool because that would suck to be a parent and your kids just got put away. Because the kid I saw, he probably looked like 23, 24.
Right.
And it's like, man, imagine having to spend time in prison, then you just get out. And
Well,
it's like,
imagine being young, just finding a political identity, getting lulled into some,
yeah,
crazy event. And, you just thought it would be another day. You thought it'd be, something to post about, talk about, and get an experience about, right?
Yeah.
Like all these, those college kids that just get just wrapped up in the narratives that they're told, and then they get radicalized real quick. It's like we don't treat those people like we do the January 6ers. A lot of these people were young men, right? Like just young men and middle-aged men and women too, and all sorts of people. But it's like there's sort of there's sort of a male leadership space that sort of Trump, I'm not going to say he presents it, but he just kind of falls in line with that thinking of like, we need a strong leader. We need, we don't have any of that stuff. So it pulls out a lot of young men that are trying to find what, a man looks like politically or, just in America right now. And I think, there's a lot going on and they're always trying to label people different things, terrorist groups like Boogaloo Boys or whatnot. And, I think when you really break all that stuff down, it's just, it's no different than like this Antifa thing. Because Antifa is not really an organization. Like, it was, but it wasn't. And they sort of change who can be part of it and, how to affiliate. There's no real connection. It's like a group of Antifa kids get arrested and in one state. And then it's not like it's a gang, like they're really tied in and, there's no organization with this stuff. Somebody just decides they're Antifa. The news decides you're Antifa. The news decides you're a J6er or a Boogaloo Boy or a terrorist.
yeah,
It's so easy to do that. And especially when, 2020 around that time, the media and their influence was so strong that they'd be able to label you a terrorist. And then Facebook says you're a terrorist group. We cannot show you. We can't display these things. And, that's slander, and it goes against your freedom of speech and all these things. So that's another thing. I think, Zuckerberg, we were talking about this before. He's sort of coming over to the other side and
hopefully
sort of becoming a para-Elon figure, which, I mean, we'll see how that works out. But I think there really needs to be a government. We need to keep that freedom of speech on all American platforms. Like if your platform is in America, like when it's offered as a service to Americans, like we have to be able to keep that freedom of speech. We can't play with that. And I think they're learning that now. But Meta is they're finicky because they sell our data like nobody else. They censor us. They do all these things. And now all of a sudden, it doesn't feel right when they're going back on it, right? Zuckerberg can do whatever he wants. That's his own thing. But when all of a sudden they're showing you decapitations on Instagram, when they used to not do that, they used to brand themselves as higher than that and more back when that Instagram photo aesthetic thing sort of is better than real life, where, you know, they sort of wanted to sell themselves as like, this is the perfect world. This is what everything happens. And they didn't want to talk about politics, war, anything bad. And it was all gone. And now they're just going to force feed it to you. I don't like that. I don't want anything to do with Meta. I'm kind of off all of those platforms. And
I haven't. I got off
choice.
2 years ago. I stopped. It was also just like the TikTok thing. I had TikTok for probably like 4 months, and I started to see, I think I mentioned this before, but I started to see how the algorithm was, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with this.
Right.
Like, it's force feeding you what they want you to see. It's not.
But poison too.
Yeah, 100%. So
and addictive, confusing poison.
Yeah.
And I just don't like that because I think it's exposure too. Like you could convert somebody to anything, any line of thinking, any sort of identity, anything with enough exposure, and then support from other people that have been exposed. It's like, it's not so hard. Like if I controlled your feed and all I showed you was, you know, Elon, and all I showed somebody else was Elon, then, you know, let you go out to a public event. There's just one small thing about Elon. Now you guys have that personal connection. You're gonna talk about that, and your bonding between you and the other person is going to foster that conversation publicly about whatever. It's really easy. It's Inception. Yeah. They do it all the time. It's just simple propaganda.
Yeah.
But you know, we need to do as much as we can to just keep the thought lines clean and simple and clear, and just like, you know, when it comes to social media, I really don't like the confusion.
Yeah. And going back to the executive orders, the one it's recent. The one I'm most excited about is the JFK and Bobby Kennedy.
Absolutely.
His brother, is it Bobby Kennedy?
No, it's RFK, just not Junior. Right?
Well, there's RFK Jr. and then his brother, but I forgot what his first name is. And then Martin Luther King Jr.
So it was JFK, RFK, and MLK.
Yeah, JFK. Yeah, MLK. So I'm excited.
Which is a little wild to have all three of those in the same executive order.
Yeah, and everyone on X is like, what about Epstein?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, Trump's gonna keep that because that's a card. Like that's a literal, like, for the people, like, for instance, Bill Gates went over to Trump's Mar-a-Lago and was like talking to him. It's like, you know, he was there saying, hey, don't release Epstein. Like, Trump knows the amount of power he has in playing that card. And he's going to keep that until the very end.
Is that the Trump card?
I think it is, because imagine the amount of power that's on the Epstein client list, and the amount of people that are like, oh, we're going to go after you. Because the United States Congress would just go after all of them for human trafficking. So it's like, if he knows who's on that list, he's going to use that to play, hey, you have to behave or I can release this.
If he released it right now, he wouldn't be able to weed everybody out.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't do RFK or JFK, whatever, Martin Luther King, and then Epstein, because it's too soon. Like, you need to have that chip to be like, I'm going to play this, and you're not going to know when I'm going to play it, to keep people in check. But anyway, going back to the JFK thing, I am so excited. And I mean, we talk about a lot of conspiracy stuff and like deep state and like ideas of like, why would somebody do that here? But I'm so excited to see something that I was not a part of. Like, I was not born, or I don't remember being alive during that time. You weren't alive during that time.
I wasn't.
So it's like I don't even really remember 9/11. So it's cool to see something. It's cool to see something that I've always heard about. It was in my textbooks. He was assassinated by this one guy. And now if it comes out that, I mean, the biggest thing I've seen is that I think it was the Warren Commission partnered with the CIA. CIA killed him.
Yep.
Warren Commission dissolved the CIA. And then
well, we're forgetting about Watergate.
Well, no. I'm not there yet.
Okay.
So Nixon found out. Obviously, he probably read the file. He found out and was probably wanting to tell somebody that the CIA assassinated them. Mm-hmm. And then Watergate happens. CIA is involved in Watergate. They frame Nixon so that nobody believes him, because it's like, oh, you're just lying because you're doing all this stuff, right? And then the CIA puts in Ford as the president because they want him to be a president, and Ford was on the Warren Commission. I believe that's like the biggest, or that's the most, I guess, thought of explanation. Because I remember
That makes perfect sense though.
Yeah, Kesh Patel was talking about, and he was like, there's so many different pieces to like why that assassination would have happened. And he was saying like, we all know just a bare amount of information.
Because my whole thing with Watergate was, of course, 9/11 was, the huge tipping point for people to really investigate what's going on.
Yeah.
That was a big inside job, and there's so many variables to look into. But the biggest thing with that was Building 7. To me, that's the most interesting thing. And when you find out about Building 7 collapsing, a whole separate tower, for no reason, and then you think about it, okay, what was in there, right? It really starts to open up. Then you look at Watergate, because the American public knew about Watergate but had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you just pair the idea of Building 7 with Watergate, then it starts to go, okay, what is this sensitive information? Where is it coming from? Who is it sensitive for? Who can't see it, right? All these questions start coming up. And for, probably since like 2012, I've been wondering very hard about Watergate, what it is. And I haven't been able to come up with any sort of reasonable answer. But and Nixon was always confusing too, because I didn't understand his motives, right? I didn't understand.
Like, why would you? For me, it was like, why would you go and bug somebody? Like, that's the dumbest thing you could do, because if you get caught, you're done. Like, so for me, I always would look at the situation and be like, okay, you're telling people to go take this information, bug the Democratic Party, and then you're going to learn how to strategize against them. For me, it's like, that would be no fun. First of all, you're in politics. Like, you don't like, why would you want to do that just to have a leg up? Like, to me, it's like, that's like, so
not worth it.
Yeah. Like, for me, it's like, I like to gamble, but I'm not like, what's the word?
Ballsy.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to go out and just be like, oh, $1 million on black. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to systematically create a plan that's going to work. And something like that is like, you're trusting these people to go in and find this information and do this bugging. And then you're just expecting like, I'm not going to get caught. Like, you don't even think of ramifications. So for me, it looks like it was strung together to frame him, to put him in this place in the spotlight, to deflect. Like,
well, I always thought of him as like being essentially a shitty president because he's disloyal and like, and basically betrayed the American people with his presidency. And that's what it looked like to me. Just to come full circle and realize he might have been more loyal to the American people than we realized. And that's the whole reason they blamed it all on him.
Yeah.
And because I thought, they blame it on him, but it's already a sinking ship and he did have connections. And, it's very easy to paint that narrative. And of course the government would want you to think that.
Yeah.
But.
And the other thing that's interesting, I mean, I think that MLK is probably the biggest, because he was fighting for no racism and equality. And the fact that they didn't like that and had him assassinated or killed.
Well,
that to me,
I've got theories and ideas, and I could be wrong. I don't know what to think. I'm not saying anything's a fact, but there's also a lot of information to go out and find yourself if you want to fact check. MLK was an actor and a puppet of the government to an extent, controlled opposition. During the civil rights movement, there really weren't any black leaders, or there's no black people on TV. If you were a black person, you didn't see somebody like you in any position of authority or in any connection to power, especially governmentally or accepted socially. So then all of a sudden they give you one, and that's all you have. It's like, he's a powerful speaker, and like he'll get you. He could be a great pastor, a really great pastor, just like his dad, right? And they picked the right person. They knew what they were doing. They sort of, there's other ideas that, he's not the only one. They do this with other people, like say Tupac or somebody else, right? Give a powerful leader with a different variety of voices, but they're all sort of controlled to an extent, and they create this narrative of what things are supposed to be. If you really look into it, this is a fact right here. MLK was saying, I don't know, maybe a year before he died or 6 months or something like that, he was saying, I was wrong. This isn't the way we need to do things. He was essentially going completely back over the I have a dream speech and saying, nope, if black people want to really be strong, they need to, like it's not about trying to be equal. It's about trying to be the best you can be. And it's like that, you can't be reliant on this thing. And that's a whole trap. That's essentially what he's saying. Go back over it. So that, I'm sure we will find a lot more about that regarding the MLK. The RFK thing is essentially just continuation cover up of JFK, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to.
But people are saying, there's always these theories about JFK Jr. as well, still being alive, because they killed him off. He died in a skiing accident, supposedly. But they killed him off as well, and they seem to really be trying to thin out the Kennedys in general. But yeah, JFK Jr. And then I just saw a tweet from John McAfee today. Did you see that?
Saw that.
What do you think about it?
Was it the video?
That video was somebody else had posted that video and made
we can put the video on the screen.
That video was old and from 2021 or something, like probably right before they came.
But you're talking about the tweet that said like, "I know what you have done." Was that what you're talking about?
The tweet that I saw was basically, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "I'm back. No, this is not hacked."
Oh, yeah. Okay. I did see. Okay.
And then and I think that's the only thing he actually put out, if it was him, right? And there is incentive for a high power hacker to hack John. Like, that's a huge incentive. It's totally possible it's fake, but it's also entirely possible that a man as powerful as John McAfee can hide himself and come back. Like, 100% possible.
Yeah.
And I think he, first of all, was a big reason a lot of the Epstein stuff and like a lot of this stuff can come to light is because he was collecting his own data. So you can't just go get the Epstein client list. You have to know where that's going to be. How is what types of people are going to be on it. You have to find your way into that inner circle and all that. Yeah. I think McAfee is the biggest spy that we've ever seen, essentially on a global level, but specifically when it comes to the elites and the inner workings of things. And so I wouldn't be entirely surprised if he did come back, but
that'd be hard though. I mean, he'd have to go prove it. He'd have to prove it to somebody who knows him. I'm not sure if Alex Jones knows him, but like he'd have to go and somebody would have to be like, yeah, it's him.
Shane Gillis knows him.
Really?
Yeah. I found an episode of Matt and Shane basically chopping it up with John McAfee, and it was hilarious. It was great. It was
what the heck?
Yeah, very very surprising. Man, Shane Gillis is connected to so much. It's actually ridiculous.
He's a plant. 100%.
100% agreed.
The fact that he saved Bud Light.
Oh yeah,
is mind blowing to me. Like this guy who barely dodges Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. He self-admittedly dodges Down. So you could see it when you look at him, right?
Oh yeah,
hilarious guy. Gets on Joe Rogan. Gets on SNL. Gets on was it Comedy Central?
Yeah, he's been on.
Yeah, there. Like he does all this stuff, and he's a nobody. And then
he's funny.
No. But it's not like he's Dave Chappelle,
right?
And then out of nowhere, he just gets a Bud Light sponsorship in the middle of all this crap, and he's like defending it, and everybody's relating to him because he's hilarious and they love his videos and like his stand-up. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, Bud Light's not that bad. Like, yeah, he was picked specifically, in my opinion, because of how good he is at making stuff up, like acting wise. Like a lot of his stories, I'm not saying they're made up, but a lot of the stuff about him I think is just like a persona.
I think so too, because when you really look into it, like he appears to be just dumb and like sort of fratty, but then when you really look into it, it's like, oh, he's a real history buff, and he's
a genius.
Yeah,
and he's just playing a part. And I think that they did that on purpose because he knows how to control a crowd. He knows how to
And when you listen to like even that video with him and John McAfee, like the stuff he's saying to John McAfee, like this man knows what's going on and is like poking at it,
Yeah.
So yeah, he definitely is a little bit of a plant, but.
Just like Kevin Hart.
Oh man, don't get me started about Kevin Hart, because Kevin Hart. Let's just talk about plants for a second.
Yeah, 100%.
Kevin Hart, when he came out, first of all, Cat Williams is way funnier than Kevin Hart. Like Kevin Hart
Times
is
10.
not even funny to me.
Yeah.
He never really was, right? He's just you say the same thing over and over again enough, exaggerated enough, somebody will laugh or whatever, and you can say it's technically funny. It's just viral. He had basically the first Netflix comedy special ever.
Yep.
And they funded him so hard, they knew what they were doing, and nobody had ever heard of Kevin Hart before this, right? He
was a small time actor,
right?
But what was he in? He was in like was it like Scary Movie? He was in like
he was
in like some like small roles in like movies. There was one, I forget what it is.
But he was never like a traditional comedian to where he had to go gig and
Correct.
open up for people. And he might have done a little bit of that here and there, but he never really had a proper career of doing that.
It was a small time. It wasn't like you see Joe Rogan had a giant comedy career and then he took off.
Right.
It was like a tiny amount and then he was like number one.
Hand selected by some big CEO looking for the next black comedian.
Yep.
To put on this huge pedestal.
Because Dave Chappelle got canceled. Cat Williams got canceled.
Right.
They didn't have anybody. And Chris Brown or Chris Rock, like I don't think...
He wasn't doing anything.
Yeah,
he was more of an actor at that point.
What was the other guy? There's another guy. But anyway, they didn't have anybody.
Well, I don't know if you said Dave Chappelle already, but he quit.
Yeah, he quit. So I'm saying like they didn't have, like you were saying, they didn't have anybody. And then out of nowhere, this guy comes in swinging, releases like 2 or 3 of the biggest stand-up specials ever on Netflix. And like Grown Ass Man, and then I forget what the other one was.
I don't even remember.
But they were like huge, right? And I remember when I think it was 2014 or 15, everybody was like talking about the special. And it was the funniest thing ever. And this was before like YouTube Shorts and virality, which would have been crazy.
I think that was the thing though, is that it wasn't about him being funny. It was that that everybody else saw that. So you could be funny if you said, you ain't got no nipple. Yeah. And everybody knows that, right?
Yeah. And so that then went to, now he's like the spokesperson for Chase Bank. And then that goes to, he's in Jurassic Park. Like, and now
he's best friends with The Rock and he's an Avenger basically. And he's also like, I don't know if you saw the Kai Cenat stuff or any of his involvement over there. I don't like that at all. I don't like this new persona that he has either, but it was all whack from the start. And I never really liked Kevin Hart. There was a kid I went to school with. I had to work on a project with him one time, so I went to his house. He's like half black, but he's named Damien, and he was obsessed with Kevin Hart. Like I went over there, and he like back to back just on repeat had to put it on. He's laughing at every joke and telling me every joke right in my face, hooked. And so it's like it really did sink his teeth into a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I was never a fan.
I'm trying to think of any other plants that was like super obvious to me.
Well, I was going to say that Kai Cenat is the most obvious plant ever.
It is, but like I still don't know.
It's not done yet.
It's not done yet, but I like obviously
he's the next Kevin Hart.
The T-Mobile commercials, I thought Speed was. Like the I Show Speed or whatever.
He's a plant for sure.
But like Kai Cenat came out of nowhere. I never even heard of that dude. And then but at the same time, I'm thinking like the whole botting of viewers and stuff. I think that plays into a big part of like how you get to be a plant nowadays is like, okay, we're just going to put, because for me, it's like, how do you know 700,000 people are watching this dude live? Like, how do I know that half of those viewers aren't just botted? Or they just manipulate it, because there could easily be 100,000 people that like him, but 700,000 at one time, like Kevin Hart, no one likes Kevin Hart that much. And then he just goes on his stream, or Nicki Minaj goes on the stream and everyone's like obsessed. It's like, what?
And, 21 Savage didn't really have much of a career. And then he goes on, I mean, he did, but it's like he was falling off clearly and then reset traction immediately. Like all the rappers that go on there they're definitely not hitting their stride, right? Like, even when Ice Spice went on there, it was like after, you know, it wasn't, I don't know. And it clearly seems to be this media driven, career building thing for, the guests and the other people. And he's sort of creating a crew of other people behind him that are like, whether it's, his group originally, but there's new members that are popping up and they're their own personalities. Like he's launching people's careers.
Because
clearly.
You see people that aren't plants. Like in my opinion, like Logan Paul, Jake Paul, KSI, like those aren't plants because you could track their work
to a degree.
Well, like they're
a different type of plant.
They're bought and paid now.
Because but with the Disney thing with the Pauls originally, that was plant. But then it's like, okay, you could start out as a plant, but like, if you start establishing other stuff, that's not plant.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the establishment, you can trace and look back on all these people who came up. But these small people that out of nowhere just got like boom, like they're just huge.
I genuinely actually think, you know what? Still, they're both still plants. And
mean,
actually, I
guess.
think Logan Paul, his brother KSI, and Kai, and all of them are actually probably on the same marketing media management thing that is super elite to a degree.
They could be.
But it's the new Hollywood. It's the internet Hollywood that they don't want us to know about. We don't know what the company is called or any of these things. But essentially, you go to an audition. You just go to an audition. You're young. You want to go to an audition. This is how you go to the Disney Channel, all these different things. But you could go to an audition for pretty much anything across the country. If you do well there, you may not get that part. You might just get put into that pipeline. But there's deeper pipelines to get put into.
Yeah.
And so they'll pull you, okay, we'll have you go do this audition and then this one and this one. And by the time, you might start doing a Disney Channel commercial.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're doing a live stream persona of somebody that is not you, that's entirely based off of this thing. We're going to give you these 3 people to be your, you grew up with these people, even though it's not true. Completely fabricated.
Yeah. And I mean, you can also go all the way back to Justin Bieber. But I mean, at the end of the day, it goes to, like, music wise, you can look at Diddy,
Illuminati.
Like yeah, I mean, there's groups out there that, I mean, you go and you sell your soul and they'll give you the world, right? But at what cost? Like, at the end of the day, the reason that there's plants is for advertising. It's a way for me to make money. Like, it's manipulation.
Well,
like,
the truth is that the industry is planted. Sure. Because there would just be authentic musicians, like folk musician sort of style, traveling around, just maybe sing by the camp. You perform for people real in real life, right? But this recording and where we can post-process and change things and edit, and then we have this video component we can do the same thing with, and we can source all these actors. It's not about the art anymore, clearly. It's this whole business. And so when everybody's convinced that that's where the art is, all of it's planted.
Yeah.
And, especially like the rock thing is sort of done now, or sort of was done, by 2010, it was clearly not really there anymore. But the rap hip hop thing was always interesting to me because, there's clearly like a story of, it came from New York and this blend of cultures and black people and Puerto Ricans in Harlem and all this whatever. But that's not really what happened at all. It's like if you really go into it, it didn't get its foothold until somebody signed somebody, and these executives put people in a position to present an image, and then you really start dissecting the image that they were trying to present at that time, whether it's like Sugar Hill Game with a hip hop. It was like, if you really just dive into it, it was set up from the start, and it's like a clear trajectory of where it goes. People don't make music just to make music. It's always like, which way is it going? What's the current like? What's going on with this? And so we're like, they kind of created this this fast food mindset,
Yeah.
And executives are the worst.
I can imagine. Just, hey, we're just going to use you for this, and you're just going to make us money. But at the end of the day, dude, a Ferrari's a Ferrari.
But I always said, there's so many theories, but I'm just going to talk about some stuff. So just the music industry has so much. If you were, the Michael Jackson thing, they were always trying to say, oh, he's a weirdo, he touches kids, all this, whatever. If you were a big megastar, whatever, that's sort of going with this plant thing. It's like you have this false persona that the public sees. Well, that means you're hiding other things. You're hiding your real self. You're hiding all this. You can hide a couple other things. You can hide some business for us. And so if you have a world tour, you're flying all over all the time and nobody's thinking about it. You got this big old jumbo jet. You could be smuggling children and smuggling drugs and doing all these things that you might not even be aware of at first.
Yeah.
But you could become aware of these things.
Yeah, it's blackmail. You're complicit.
But at the end of the day, if you're the one still involved with this, they'll pin it on you. They'll try to blame it.
Yeah.
And so I always said Michael Jackson, they would probably use him, in that sort of way. Juice World, that seems to be I sort of believe there's something going on there whether it was drugs or
that's so weird though, because
probably something more sinister.
But like, why? I've thought about that, and he was really,
and his girlfriend, I believe, is a CIA handler. or some organization type handler that was planted in his life to control him. And she was a drug dealer before, and she's actually the reason, whatever. I don't know. It's a whole long
That's
thing
weird
to
though,
get into,
like, 'cause
and people are sensitive about him. But
yeah, I don't know. He didn't really do anything besides just music, and then he just dies. I don't know. It could have been like he actually did overdose.
I just don't think so. And also, it's like they're always trying to say, oh, there's a bunch of video of him clearly taking perks and all this, whatever. But I think that's also more of a symbol of like, hey, there's some bad stuff going on. I'm trying to hide from it.
I think a lot of the females now in the space, I mean, like Sabrina Carpenter, like, I think a lot of these, it's more, it's easier to put women in plant positions now than men, because especially with like OnlyFans, and you can just make everything so sexualized now. Like, I think it's easier to have these women show up out of nowhere, and then they're just
because they can stray that line of innocent and sexual.
Yeah, and you just have to start them at an early age, because she came out of nowhere. I had not heard of her. Like, was she in Disney or something like that?
I think so.
But then out of nowhere, it was just like Bella Thorne.
Yeah, the redhead.
Yeah,
that Disney girl.
Yeah, same thing. But
and
for
Zendaya,
me, it's also like the executive thing, like you were talking about. It's like these people had failing careers, or it's just like they auditioned and then they did one season, and then they're like, "Hey, do you want to be like a music star?" And then they just like put them and train them how to.
It's sort of it's bigger than that too, because we like to think like TV shows, movies, music, like official projects are where they're being planted and blah blah. And we think everything outside of that is to a degree sort of genuine, but that's where we're so wrong. Like that girl you were just talking about, not Zendaya, the other one,
Sabrina. Oh, Bella Thorne.
Bella Thorne. So she was just the Disney girl that really didn't work out for her. It was going to be a decline for her, seriously, is like you were a Disney kid, now you're going to fall off and be like a Lindsay Lohan or something. But you weren't that successful to start with. And then because of her decline, it's like she had to go an alternate route. Some executive somewhere said, hey, we're going to pair you up with this dude, Modson, who is an artist I've known about for a long time, but he's never really broken through the surface, and he's always been underground, struggled to really make it as a career. So opportunity for him, opportunity for her. That Tana Mojo girl, or Mangu, or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That blonde girl. So her thing was falling off. People didn't like her. It was like a Fousey Tube thing for her, but almost worse. It was like we were just going to cancel it and be done. And so she sort of gets involved, and they were all three in a relationship, but they're all sort of making YouTube videos and all this type of stuff, and like people are really... it's just like they create this redemption arc for you, all these pathways, and there's definitely something. There's no real D-list anymore. It's like you could go D-list for a second, but you can make your way back.
Oh yeah, I agree. Anyway, we strayed from the
absolutely
the assassination plot, but what else do you have?
Oh well, okay. So speaking of those pardons, if we're gonna get back to that, shout out everybody that did get a pardon. If you deserved it, that's cool. But something we need to get going, and I've seen it going. I almost talked about this last episode, actually. Before any of this pardoning was happening. FPS Russia?
So is he being held? He's
free.
Is he in Russia?
Nope. He's in Georgia.
He is?
At his house.
Oh.
Free man. But a felon. See,
really?
This is where it gets interesting. If you didn't know,
his videos are from like early.
Yeah. So, I would say 2010 was probably his era, maybe even a little earlier. But yeah, he was in that gun tuber space, and nobody was really doing gun content like that.
He was one of the first ones.
All YouTube content regarding guns was going to be somebody that's not worried about how it's going to look on camera. There's no entertainment value. They weren't really trying to make a good YouTube video. He was the first person to give it a true effort, way before Demolition Ranch, and he's probably he's 100% the inspiration for people like Demolition Ranch. But he was a kid. His real name's Kyle. I forget his last name, but he's not Russian at all. He's just an American kid from Georgia, and so he liked guns. I think his dad was into guns and all this, whatever. They grew up shooting in Georgia, and that's cool. He decided to create this persona where he would play a Russian guy, and FPS Russia, and it's all this entertainment thing where he had this fake persona, but he used it to fund the the guns that he was going to have on the channel. And then it just blew up into this whole thing. It was genuinely the most popular videos on YouTube for a long time, every single day, front page, front page, front page. And he had a wide variety of stuff. People were learning things. People were kind of excited to see something different.
Yeah.
And he became so successful, though, that the government sort of had issue with the way that he's propagating young children who are maybe invested in Call of Duty or similar franchises to consider real firearms and like, oh, that's a real thing. And we have that connection, right, of understanding this thing in the game is a real thing. So now they need to mirror each other, right? But he became so successful, and one of the things that he did was his partner was he had an FFL, federal firearms license, so he could sell and make firearms. And he needed to partner with him so that he could get the amount of weapons that he had and service them and do all this whatever. And I think he ran other businesses where people could even buy tannerite through and whatever. That guy, his partner with the FFL, late at night, one night, he was there by himself. And then, he got shot in the head, basically. From behind, I think with like a 9mm. And nobody should have been there that entire day besides Kyle, FBI's Russia. And so he sort of got blamed for that. And so there was an investigation into that. And this is all the setup.
Yeah.
It was an investigation into that to find him as, doing something. And so while they're investigating, supposedly, the CIA or the FBI, I think the FBI, had a package of marijuana shipped to his house.
Mm.
And so then when it gets there, package comes inside, doesn't know what's in it, right?
Yeah.
Package comes, but if you accept a package, like you accept a package.
Yeah.
And so then like 2 minutes later gets raided by the FBI. They arrest him. And he's got so many guns in the house and all this whatever. And some of the things he had, it was like a dummy RPG, and they were like freaking out about that and all this whatever.
Yeah.
But he gets arrested and he's charged with a felony. And so he goes to prison, and he was in prison for about, 5 years, I would say.
I remember he went to prison,
maybe
but that's
less,
like the last
maybe
thing
2
I remember.
years.
Okay.
And so, he goes to prison. And then when he comes out, he's free. No probation or anything. Time served. He did what he was supposed to do, but he is forever a felon. He'll never be able to own a gun again, and all of these things. But the truth is, there's enough information out there to find that, like, this is an innocent man who didn't order these things, had no involvement.
Yeah.
In fact, he went so far out of his way to do everything correctly. And it's really unfortunate that, that his business partner died and all this.
Yeah.
They were trying to blame that on him too. But I think it's just unfortunate circumstances. But the big thing is, when it comes to the 2A community, when it comes to youth and who used to be youth during the time that he was putting his videos out, and that's like me, right?
Yeah.
It's like you've got a lot of young men and just men in general now that understand where that came from, and he was a voice for that to an extent, but now he has so much more perspective on it. And if you listen to his podcast at all, like, they always talk about a bunch of crazy stuff, but to have somebody that's gone through both ends of this, understand like when they're going to come for you, how they're going to do it, all these different things, but also not afraid to speak about things. And he's ready to, basically start the channel again. I don't know if he's going to keep his persona though. He might just be Kyle, like regular Kyle.
I'd say you have to start over, like just be Kyle. Like, it's not worth trying to, because that happened so long ago that the amount of people I feel like people could be like, oh, that'd be fun to go back to that old time. But it's like, if you're trying to capture that new generation, like the younger kids, like they're not going to be able to relate, because then you'd have to go. I'm not even sure if his old videos are still up. Are they? Like, does his channel ever get taken down by YouTube?
I think they probably striked it to hell.
Yeah, because so you'd have to start over for sure.
Because all the stuff that was perfectly legal and always should have been when he was filming those videos, it's like, and then they changed YouTube policy, they changed a bunch of laws and all that stuff. So they'll be able to strike him for fully auto fire in probably most of them. Like now you can't have any fully auto fire on YouTube. even if it's legal, even if you were, which is crazy because it's a little bit contradictory because it literally verbatim says, no simulated or actual fully automatic fire of a firearm. And if you go watch war footage, there's real fully automatic fire, and there's actually people getting killed, and there's people getting maimed and all sorts of different things. But it's sort of viewed in a different lens, and they just allow it.
Yeah,
I like YouTube.
They're just trying to take away the 2A, like just
but the more they fight
Amendment,
against it, like people will fight back. Though there's always a loophole.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, like the freedom of speech, like I have the freedom to show my Second Amendment rights. Like no part of me is saying I'm shooting people on camera,
right?
But it's like I should be able to display, like the fact that a lot of these channels too show how to safely handle a firearm and how to shoot a firearm, and even if it's for competition purposes, showing people strategies like CQB, like showing people like the different trainings, like. But
you should want people to be as trained as possible with all weapons.
Yeah.
And you should minimize the access to them for, criminals and unfit people, right? Like we need to do a better process of determining and a better system. Like the background check process isn't perfect, but there's a lot to be done there. And when they push against us, like especially platforms like YouTube, it's like people are getting creative and finding loopholes and making YouTube look stupid. And the GunTube space is blown up a lot. Like there's a lot of people in there, and from like Brandon Herrera and Demolition Ranch and just a lot of big names out there, but they're even making their own platforms and really drawing a lot of stuff outside of YouTube.
Yeah, 100%. There was something I wanted to talk about, and we were talking about on a totally different subject, but the entrepreneurial space and like workers and stuff like that. So I had a thought, wanted to hear your thoughts on this too, but I think in the regular job market today, I feel like people are being, I don't want to say underpaid in the sense of we should boost everyone's salary. I'm talking about regular like retail job or whatever, sales job, whatever. I think people should be paid based off the desired metric or outcome that the company is wanting. So let's say that you work for Kroger, right? And your job is to stock shelves, right? And you work overnight.
Okay.
Kroger's like, hey, we're going to pay you $14, $15 an hour just to stock shelves, right? And let's say that this person's getting paid that and this person's also getting paid that. Let's say this person does 100% of the job perfectly and this person does 70%. So an A effort and C effort. And they're both getting paid the exact same. Mm-hmm. But these companies, I've worked for a lot of them, these companies have these standards that they want their employees to perform at, and their standards don't equate with the amount of labor that they're instilling. So, for instance, you walk into a Target, you walk into a Walmart, if you see how the store looks all nice and pretty, somebody had to do that, right? The idea is called zoning, right? So re-putting everything back together. But if your standard is we want the store to look a certain way, but you don't have that many people to do it, you can't hold somebody to the expectation of finishing that if there is no incentive for it to get done. So my idea that I thought of that'd be great is pay people based on their metric or output instead of paying them hourly. So you can have it be an hourly metric, but you can adjust the metric of how much they get paid based on their output. So if you say, hey, you're a cashier, right? And we're going to pay you base pay $10 an hour. But if you make sure you don't lose any money during transactions, you don't mess up, and you have no customer complaints, or you achieve all these metrics like that we want you to get, like let's say it's phone numbers, or like let's say it's a credit card sale or whatever. If you achieve all these, we're going to pay you $20 an hour.
Do you think if your employer was basically saying, okay, we need you to perform at this level, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what they're saying. Well, you have your base pay, but if you meet these certain standards, we'll incentivize you and pay you for that, right?
Yeah.
But do you think at a certain point because they're the one. It's like if they want you to reach a certain standard or whatever, whether it's, I don't know, they can almost make you not do a good job on purpose if they want you to not, because then it's incentivizing them to not keep track well, to not, to make these things harder or specifically to go against you or other policies in the company. As long as people fully have control in their corporation, they'll find some way to work around this essentially.
So the idea, like I thought about that, right? It's like, okay, like let's say you say it's $20 an hour, but then you basically say, oh, that wasn't good enough, I'm paying you $10 an hour. Like there has to be accountability, and you can't have, it'd have to be the managers in those departments making those decisions. And it would have to be on that manager's ownership. And if it looked good, then it looked good. But if not, then that manager gets fired. I'm saying it varies day to day basis. So that way it does change, right? Like if you walk into a store and you say, hey, this is worth $20 an hour. This is what I want. It has to look exactly like that. If it does, then cool, you get this money. If it doesn't, then you get paid this amount. I just think that because so many people are like, they want bonuses at the end of the year, or they want a pay raise. And instead of doing that, you can, like, because for instance, if you're like super motivated one day, we're going to reward you for that motivation you put in your work ethic. But if you're not motivated, you're going to get paid according to your level of work ethic instead of just the same pay. Because like I was saying, you could have a super motivated person who's getting paid the exact same as somebody who's unmotivated, but it's because they say, oh, well, that's how much that job is worth. Well, so like a doctor, for instance, you could take it all the way to being a doctor. If a doctor messes up in a surgery, he still gets paid the same. But if you have a doctor who succeeds and their patient recovers and does really well, it's not like they get an incentive.
But wouldn't the hospital drop him if he's doing he's a liability for that hospital to employ, and so they're just going to fire him. And then he's not going to be able to get good recommendations for any other, he's going to have to go to a whole nother network that's lower than what he's on.
But I'm not sure if it
clear demotion.
But I'm saying like, yeah, that's the extreme example of like he messes up, like you'd get fired. But I'm saying like if there's certain things where it's like I tell somebody go do X, Y, and Z, and then they only do X and Y and they don't do Z, it's like, okay, you didn't do that, I'm going to pay you accordingly.
Well, I think it's like you're locked in at your rate. We hired you at whatever we hired you at, $20 an hour. And then if you do well, like it's kind of how it already works with the raises. It's like if you're going above and beyond, you're deserving of a raise. But we need a better system of like, because a lot of people don't ask for raises. There's probably inopportune times and opportune times to ask, and maybe that's not fair to the people that are actually earning these things. And then also like employees are stingy with the raises in the first place. But if we had a better system of like, if you were certified at a certain level and every day you clock in and your performance, you get data to come home with and you plug it into the thing, it's going to like, no, on record, like ask the government, I'm doing my stuff. Like you got it, I'm deserving. Once I reach a certain level, it's like your employer maybe is even required to whatever, or they need to then do an investigation, find out that's not true somehow and represent themselves. But
yeah, but I'm talking about like it only works if you match standards with pay.
Yeah.
And like the standards that companies are wanting are ridiculous compared to the cost that they're giving people to achieve these standards. So if somebody says, hey, your job is to be a cashier, and they say, I'm gonna pay you $15 an hour, but then they try to teach them how to do another type of job. Like imagine if my job is to get paid $15 an hour to be a cashier, but then they train me how to also zone. It's like, okay, I'm getting paid $15 an hour to be a cashier, but now you're making me go do that over there. You should be paying me more because you've taught me more. I've now withheld more information. You've increased the level of standard that you want me to perform at, but you're paying me the same. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like, if they're going to have these standards, like I know Target at one point did like modernization where they basically were saying, hey, we're going to train people how to do every single thing in the store. And then we're just going to pay them $15 an hour. But it's like, you just educated that person on your whole entire company and how it runs store level, but you're only going to pay him this amount of money. It's like, where's the investment? Like you are investing in this person's knowledge, so you should reciprocate that with paying them more money.
It's just not how they look at it because they're not incentivized to look at it that way. Why would they? They're so detached from
they
the
are.
actual employee.
But that's why I'm saying, like, it's ridiculous how they have these standards for employees to perform at, but they're not willing to dish out.
Well, the thing is, essentially, it boils down to everybody. All these major companies are relying on turnover rate.
Yeah,
they don't have to give out raises. They don't have to. You don't even have to do a good job because they want to fire you.
Yeah,
because the longer you are there, the more of a liability you become in their eyes. Yeah. And they're not wrong. If you're a smart businessman, you do the same thing. But you know, we need better opportunities of actual work. And if there was something that paid as well as Amazon, that wasn't bullshit, everybody from Amazon would go do that. And then Amazon kind of suffers. And then it's like Amazon would be responsible to the public to maybe provide better services, opportunities, products, even to incentivize people to even spend money over there or to work over there. And I don't know. I think we just need the power to go back to the people, like it, and not even just the individual, because then nobody else cares about you, so they'll push you to the back of the line anyway. The government doesn't have to do it. But if we're all on the same page in a way where it's like, no, we're going to demand this, and you're just not going to be able to operate unless we do this. It sort of goes back to like unions, I guess, but that's not the proper solution exactly.
I don't think it's the proper solution. I mean, the only other option I could think of is you have to commission base everything. Like if you're in a store and you help a customer find something they're looking for, like that store wouldn't have made a sale unless you helped.
I like that.
And because at the end of the day, like if your job's a salesman, like I think you should be getting commission. And if your job is somebody who's not to be on the sales floor helping somebody, you should not have to worry about helping them in the sense of...
imagine if you're not even in a sales position. Let's say you're that cashier at Target.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there, okay, you have an 8-hour shift and you're just going to be on that register. Now, somebody else has that same 8-hour shift and they're just going to be on that register, but they maybe have 5 people come through there and they're only in line for 2 minutes. They only have a couple items or whatever, right? But you had 16 people come through your line and they were all there for like 15 because they already had carts and carts full of stuff, right? You should be paid like the number of transactions that you did that day and the amount of time that they took or the amount of items that were on that transaction should be correlated to it, and then you should be given a bonus payout at the end of the day for that specifically. Yeah, but you and that other person should make the same base pay of just being there.
But that's what I'm saying is like there should be a base pay, but based off of your performance and accuracy of completion, you should be getting compensated for that. Because the whole like I know some companies, they say they want to get it's like phone number capture, right? They want to get the person's phone number. So it's like if they say, hey, your goal today is to get 30 phone numbers captured and you're a cashier, you should reward that person if they get all 30, because that person is now having to persuade and to get that information. But if you're paying somebody 15 and 15 and this person is getting 30 and this person is getting 0, this person's not going to get fired for that because their main job is a cashier. You can't fire somebody based off of not achieving a metric that they can't control, because it's called an uncontrollable, right? So it's like you're not going to reward this person, but you're going to keep them on the same pay level. Like there needs to be like that level of like giving them an extra bonus, like payout.
Certain things like you were just saying with that capturing the phone numbers. If it was like, okay, we sign people up for a store card and it's like, they're incentivized to sign up. They get their little $15 something.
Yeah.
What if you got $5? The company could handle that. The cards, whoever that goes to, like it's economical for everybody. They really wouldn't lose any money. They would probably get better results because you probably have more people signing up because now both parties are really incentivized. Yeah. So, keeping it as an extra, and then if that was the metric that we were going by, like we're really concerned about store card signups or something like that, then when we fail to meet our thing, it's not like that's just already included in your base pay job and you're doing a bad job now because you haven't signed in this whole extra thing. It's like, no, that needs to be
it's extra on top.
It is.
Like your job is a cashier.
Right.
Your job
on your title
is to handle money and to process this transaction because we don't have self-checkout. But if you do extra on top, which is these uncontrollables, and since it's an uncontrollable, you should be paid for those uncontrollables. Because if you're doing it's basically like normally companies have to pay people to do sales, right? Like
Right.
if it's a cashier, you have somebody walking on the sales floor trying to get people to sign up. Hey, come over here, do this. But it's like, oh, we're just going to combine the role.
Right.
And it's like either
But without proper title and then without proper pay either, we're just going to give you additional responsibilities.
yeah. And I've seen that so much in my career of like them giving out extra or more responsibilities to somebody who only makes this amount of money, but then they blackmail that person and say, hey,
Right.
keep doing this and we might give you more money.
Right. If you do want, that's the thing. It's like right now there's no extra that you can do. You might already be doing extra things on top of your job that you're not incentivized to do and you're not getting paid extra for. But that sort of gets lumped into your base pay and that's expected of you. And then if you want more or anything or even just what you deserve from doing that, opportunities get dangled over people's heads. And there's a whole environment of, it's pretty cutthroat at the end of the day. It's like if you want to make it anywhere or stay anywhere, it's like you're going to have to be there long enough to see the bad parts of it.
Yeah.
And then, no system is perfect. So inevitably, people just end up, like if you stay long enough at a company, you're going to end up being the bad guy at that company.
Yeah.
No matter how much you wanted things to be the correct way.
Yeah.
It's just that
you
you
start
wouldn't be able
thinking.
to be there
Yeah.
unless, you just went with how it is and there's that environment.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is like they don't care about their employees that have been there for long enough because the amount of information that they know, the resource that they are to then go and teach, they don't like, for instance, if someone's at a retail location and they're designated as a trainer to train somebody,
Right.
they should be paid to train that person besides their regular amount of money because you're trusting that person to train and make this person good. You should incentivize that or else they're just going to be like, hey, whatever, maybe teach them bad habits. It's like companies need to start putting effort into building a good customer experience. And I know we had talked about this.
It comes from building good employees, and that means caring about them, investing in them.
Which means good customer satisfaction because you're wanting to go. I mean, for me, it's like I've always thought about wanting to have my own company, and it's like you want to have the best of the best.
Yeah.
And it's like these companies, like you said, all these workers are just numbers. They're just a number on a page, and they don't care because they're more worried about turnover rate. Like companies nowadays are more worried about you quitting or getting fired because they want you to quit. Because if you fire somebody, then unemployment becomes a thing. Right. So it's like companies nowadays literally will not fire you and they'll just make you want to quit. And they'll just and it's just something that they do, make them quit. And it's something that I've had to deal with. And to me, it's just not right. Because it's like, I know this person can be changed if we retrain them, develop them a certain way. But they're like, it's all petty. It's all, I don't like them, just get them to quit.
Well, and the company, the actual corporation is not, they're in a whole other place and have nothing to do with this. It just exists in that small store, right?
Yeah.
It's like the training, you can't really say that you can't fault anybody for anything if they haven't been properly trained.
Yeah.
But training is abysmal pretty much everywhere you go, and there's not good training. There's usually not enough people, and sometimes they just let you figure it out and do whatever. But where's the accountability from the company now when you mess up? See, they need to have people that are corporate trainers that literally, when that's their job, when somebody's a new hire, they fly all over the country to each individual store and train that person, right? And then when they're done with that training, there's for sure a certain standard that they need to be trained to, but you would get certified as, training completion on this level.
Your training,
and the standard is not just that store's standard or whoever lets it become that. It would truly be to a certain level, and then you would get a proper certification, and then at that point there's the accountability is on you. So
yeah I mean, anyway, and that goes into like development and stuff, and I mean I could talk for hours about my distaste with companies on this, but people nowadays just develop yourself. To me it's ridiculous. It's like if you want to have a strong company, you need to develop your employees to be strong. You can't just say, hey, you're on your own, figure it out, because it's like, how do I read your mind? How do I read If you're
I think it's the issue is companies are started by entrepreneurs and visionaries and people with drive, and then they're sold to or bought by people that don't care. They're just money hungry. They're leeches essentially, or that person dies and it gets inherited by the wrong group of people, or just people that are leeches on the board are gonna take over. And these companies are all fizzling out. They're gonna die. They're not gonna last 10 years, but they're gonna get replaced. But they're not concerned about what they're gonna get replaced with because for now they're here.
Yeah, and that's why I think it goes back to like Doge is like the fact that if you look at a big, large scale macro view of like, that's what Elon wants to do is like streamline and make it efficient and like develop people, train people, like, so that way you don't have to worry about like you're matching the pay. Like for instance, if they're doing Doge, right, and they want to shrink all these departments, it's like, they're not trying to pay these people less. They're just trying to, it's like, why do you need 400 people to do a 2-person job? But those 2 people are going to get paid well for doing that job. It's not like they're trying to shrink the money. It's like if you're spending $1 million on 400 people doing one job, you could easily spend $500,000 on 4 people doing those jobs if you trained them. But the pay is still good for those 4 people, but it's making it more efficient. Whereas all these other companies should look at the same thing. It's like, how do we reward the people we're training to do a good job, but also be more efficient? And I think that is like the biggest key is like what we're seeing with Doge right now is like they're showing the American companies how to be efficient and to cut the fat because all that money is just lost.
Yeah.
And it's,
Well, and people are getting paid to do half-ass jobs all the time. And, you know, like there's those 4 people and they're all maybe in each other's space because 2 people really could do a good job, but those 4 people, there's not enough work for everybody. So now that creates a problem for who is currently working or in the space. And, you know, the standards get lowered and the amount of work per person is not there. So they're not even feeling accomplished with what they're doing and they're getting paid less. And, you know, that equals just a dissatisfaction across the workforce in the country. But if those 2 people were getting paid adequately, did a good job every single day and really put that work in, they're going to feel satisfied. They're going to get compensated for that.
Yeah.
And now in the rest of their life, like they're going to put that energy into everything they do.
Yeah. And something I forgot to mention, but COVID for me is really what screwed up retail. You could look back before COVID, companies poured into being on top of their standards and stuff like that and having a lot of people like at a store working, right? Like the amount of people that they had at one time was just great. And COVID comes along, they make a lot of money and they have nobody working. So they realized, hey, we can make a lot of money if we just cut payroll. And for everybody out there who doesn't know, payroll is the first thing that gets cut. It's the biggest expense in a company. So if you're wondering why there's nobody working, they don't have hours or whatever, it's because they're cutting payroll at the top. And it's because of COVID. They realized, hey, we can save a lot of money if we just cut payroll. And that's what they did. They made so much money and they had nobody working. And so they just carried over that. And all these companies you walk in, there's nobody in there working because they realized, hey, we can keep our stock prices elevating because we just cut at the end of the year from payroll to try to get as close to zero as we can. And for me, it's like that's the biggest problem is they started getting greedy. And instead of focusing on their customer satisfaction and their store standards, they said, you know what? Who cares? We're just going to pretend we have these standards and we're just going to cut out all these hours. Because the amount of people that are like really good in these companies and want to make a living, they're just like, oh, we're just not going to pay you like overtime. Like you should want to pay your best workers overtime to be the best. You know, I'm not saying that they're like, no one wants abuse of overtime,
Right.
but it's like, you want that to happen. Like there was a reason why nobody cared about overtime before COVID is because they had the payroll allocated for that. They knew what they were getting with that overtime. But now you get rid of COVID and then everyone's like, oh, no more overtime because they realized we don't care about these standards that we've enforced and we can just keep cutting all this money to just make our stock look.
Yeah, but it's such a game for the people at the top that are detached from the results and probably don't care because, you know, they can get away with it because it's a monopoly when all the businesses operate the same way. It's a monopoly on the workers essentially because companies could be really good, and they used to be good back in
Yeah.
the day. It was like, well, you would love to work for Coca-Cola, you know, they're a worldwide international company,
Yeah.
a symbol of all this stuff and industry and all this whatever. They're good paying jobs probably. But as that diminishes and all the companies let the standard slip because, oh, we can get away with it because they're doing it,
Yeah.
and then everybody can get away with it because everybody's doing it, all of a sudden, there are no good jobs.
Yeah.
Because it used to be, oh, you don't want to lack standards as a corporation because then your employees will go somewhere else. But all of a sudden, when everybody is lacking, there's nowhere else to go corporately. Guess what? You know where those people are going to go? They're going to stop seeking corporations. They're going to stop seeking, just that traditional workforce. We're going to re-engineer the way that things work and operate outside of that. That's where you have, whether it's these new social media type businesses or outlying things, that people can put together. But, people just get really creative, and people sort of, there's like a new birth of entrepreneurship that's sort of going on right now, where people are really putting their boots in the mud, building something, setting up a foundation for something, and then growing it slowly. But now when we have just like those corporations are sort of doing the same thing and diminishing everything, now we have, let's say I have a corporation and I started it from the mud and I built a foundation and you did the same. Now we have two foundations that are like right next to each other, and now there's a third person. Now we have such a foundation that we can all build everywhere, and we don't need the corporations, right? So when we can invest in the corporations that we do like, and when we can, and those will be built up by people like us, now we're just investing directly back into the American people. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like removing that government entity that businesses and corporations act as. And it's like, no, you're your own boss. If you want to work for somebody else, you can, but that's like a contractual obligation sort of thing with a civilian, a real, a real human, right? Yeah. Not this business entity that can contractually you're a robot at that point. You're not interfacing with a real human.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's kind of what I see retail going to, is they're trying to this is not a word, but robotize all these people just to be like, to do all that. And for me, it's like, why not just do robots? Like if you're going to, they will, but like Amazon's already doing it.
But it's also not going to go well. It's like the automation can't grow in the same type of way. They limit themselves. You build the automation, and then it's like building a vending machine. Okay, it dispenses food. That's what it does. You've built this thing. You've put all these billions of dollars into doing this thing, and there's not really the opportunity to pivot this into where the future truly will go. It's like investing in the future too early will leave you in the past, Yeah. And these corporations have too much money not to invest too early, and they all are sort of looking at the direction that things are going probably. I don't know. I think there's sort of a disconnect also, because there's in-touch billionaires and there's out-of-touch billionaires, right? Like, Elon or, that sort of side is like, okay, they're in touch. They understand there's a commitment to people, at least presented to be. But then you have all these, just completely out-of-touch billionaires that have no idea about anything, that just technically own this stuff. And those are the businesses that we have, right? We need a direct connection to the people that own these corporations as well, and like an obligation to, commit yourself to a certain standard.
Yeah, that's true. You know what else I was thinking of is if like you were like there was like I know this is like, I know it's sort of like government overreach, but it'd be an interesting concept to talk about. If like you do a high physically demanding job, if you like had to legally get paid more because of the stress on your body, or like they had to guarantee a retirement or something like that based off like...
I don't think that's government overreach. I mean, it's just like legal pension funds for specific, jobs.
Yeah, because if you're like doing construction and you're like having to carry all this stuff or doing something, like they should be like, hey, based on like, regardless of what the job is, it could be retail, it could be a engineering job, but based on like your body's output and how much that's like, you should be getting paid to do that. Because like if you're getting paid $15 an hour to dig trenches, or you're getting paid $15 to stand at a cash register, I feel like you should be getting some sort of extra because you're putting your body through way more vigor compared to.
Yeah, it's tough to quantify.
That's what I'm
truly.
saying, because you'd have to find that metric, and like that's like a hard thing.
But the issue is that like I totally see what you're saying. We almost tried to do that. That was the old school way of like, yeah, if you're working harder, because everything was physical back in the day.
Yeah.
If you're working harder, you're doing a more demanding job, you're going to get paid more. And we still kind of have that. Construction still pays more than your average job,
Yeah.
but compared to what, you know, a twig with a brain can make, you know, out of with a degree with minimal effort
Yeah.
using technology, it's just not fair. It's not the same scale anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, we need to, and it's great to have those people in the technology and to be utilizing those things, but we pay them egregiously sometimes, and then, you know, that's going to go to their head because they're so out of touch with physical work.
Yeah.
And so now they feel entitled to something that maybe they're not, and they feel like that should be the standard for everybody like them, you know, whether or not they actually have achieved as much as this person has or not. It's like,
Yeah.
corporate people working on a computer, you know, let's just say it's like, okay, coders in general are going to get paid a certain amount. But if there's one coder that's doing a really good job and they sort of make a breakthrough and create an application that does a revolutionary thing, now all of a sudden, all these other coders, because they're in that same space, feel incentivized that they need to be, you know, paid more, or that their job is really important, but they might be sitting at home playing Path of Exile or something.
Yeah.
And they do, you know, I mean, this is the truth of what's going on.
Yeah.
These people, you know, they're not working hard. What they're doing might be difficult or require a skill, but it's like the actual effort and the output, it's wasted money in certain places. It's like coding is a skill. We need to, but we're results based. Like we need to be striving for results, especially in that space. We can't just let everybody become complacent and say, hey, the future is coding. We need coders. So we're going to pay a bunch of coders really well. You're going to get a bunch of lackluster people that are comfy, feel like, we made it. We scammed them. We're good. We'll type a little code and do something. But if you really, let's say coding does not pay well actually, and we just need this result clearly, and we will pay $1 million for this. How many people are just going to learn these skills themselves to try this, right? And then we've created a bunch more skilled people because of this incentivized thing that they might even not get that, but now they've taught themselves these skills. Now another opportunity presents itself. Now they can go after that one, right? Yeah. And so having people, I think we talked about this before, but just that freelance sort of work environment where everybody's, you know, it's not like you have one job. It's almost like a board in like a game, you know, like a quest board or something, right? People will just put out that they need something done or they need a certain result or whatever. And as many people could try or audition or whatever it's going to be, but it's only results based, you know? And so if everything is like that, everybody would be out doing side quests, and these side quests would have rewards and they'd be good. And then it's like everybody would be maybe not even one specific skill set. It's like we would jump around, we would talk to each other about what's going on and like figure out how, if I learn these skills, and people do this on a small scale, we sort of do this, combine our skills, right? You know about audio, I know about video, we'll make a music video. That's a revolutionary idea at some point.
Yeah.
But the more that, you know, if, to put it like this, if you spent your whole life doing audio and then somebody else spent their whole life doing video and then they met each other, yeah, that's the one thing that they're going to make. Duh. Anybody would have made that at a certain point though. And yet, if we had people that maybe didn't spend their whole life doing one thing, they spent part of it doing video, and then they went to audio, and then they said, hey, let me do a music video. They did that 30 years before these two people that invested their whole life did it. And now the rate of invention and the rate of improvement on things, you know, just the ideas get out there and they get done.
Yeah. Something else, I mean, I've always had this idea too, but you were saying kind of audition or whatever to do these roles. I think that's how interviews should be. I feel like interviews should not be talking sitting down. It should be, for instance, if you want to work on a gun range and they say, okay, you want to work on a gun range? All right, we're going to go to a bay. here's a gun, disassemble it,
Right.
fire, do everything.
Right.
Okay, you've showed me that you're proficient in something that I'm hiring for you to do. So, for instance, if I want you to be a teacher, all right, we brought in 30 kids into a classroom. All right, we're gonna simulate. All right, everyone, start talking. All right, teacher, how do you get them back in focus? All right, teacher, how do you teach this? How do you handle this question? Or if it's a manager, right? You'd simulate. All right, we're going to have these 4 people doing tasks and we need all these tasks done a certain way. All right, I want you to manage and get them all on the same page. Like that would help so much more with finding good people that fit the right
Trial
job.
by fire.
Because nowadays they're like, oh, you don't have experience. It's like, but if I learned, like for instance, being a car mechanic, if I went to college to be a car mechanic, or if I learned how to do it on my own car at home by watching YouTube videos, I should be able to show up and say, here's my skills, let's put that to the test, instead of saying, hey, you didn't go to college, you don't know what you're talking about, because all of it's just on paper and it gives the company more of an opportunity to see, oh, this person actually knows how to do what they're doing. And it's not all just talk, because the amount of times I've been in retail and I've had managers or in different jobs that it's like, oh, they got hired because they've talked their way into it. Like I remember when I was a manager, I hired somebody who talked their way into it. And I was like, they're amazing. They said everything perfectly. They were the worst person I could have ever hired for that job.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like if you have that opportunity, kind of like you were saying with coding, putting them to the test and saying, hey, here's a code.
Well, you know what? It's funny you say about coding because I think that's sort of how they operate most of the time.
But like it would make sense because there's only one way for you to truly find out how if somebody can do it. And they should do that with every single job, because then it's the proof is in the pudding. Like they were able to perform or they're just lying, because anybody can put whatever on a resume.
Yeah.
And they can talk.
And
good.
everybody does that now.
And think about how much of a waste of time it is to go and then have that person get trained, but then realize they can't perform. And now that job is vacant and then you have to go hire somebody else. If you can just get a lineup, let's say it's for a manager job that's paying $60,000 a year. If you get 7 applicants that you're like, okay, on paper, these all look good. Okay, now we're going to have all of them perform and see how they all do. It's so much easier to choose and pick somebody.
Right.
But it's
literally if it was categorized to like, we need you to do like, okay, you're doing the teacher. Okay. So we're going to sit you down with some kids. We're going to see how you interact with them. Okay. Then we're going to set up a role play disciplinary thing with a child actor that's going to come in.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do a knowledge test to see actually what you know to be teaching these kids. And then we're going to do a paperwork efficiency test, right? You'll get graded on each one of these things. And then you have 10 candidates and we can look at each category. They scored this and that and compare them and say, this is mathematically, according to our metrics, the correct candidate.
Yeah. And then it gives you so much more trust in that person. And that's why it's like when you're a cop, you go through like the academy and people hire you based on how well you did, right? Because it's like, okay, we have this is how we tested you to see how you did. That's how the Army does it too. Like if it's Delta selection or Navy SEAL selection, they watch you work and they pick you based off how you worked. They didn't say, oh, well, this guy on his resume, it says he can run a 5-minute mile and he can ruck, a 9-minute mile or blah, 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 blah. And, oh, we're just going to choose you. No, they select you based on watching you perform.
Right.
So it's like everything I feel like should be like that. Because then it just makes it also makes the person who knows that they can perform, it gives them such a confidence to perform because they're like, oh, I can do this. I know I can do this.
Well, I think it's funny. Well, you said like the gun range thing. I work at a gun range. I was surprised that you like that's not part of the process because clearly it should be, you know? But it's funny to me because I was just thinking this the other day. It's like you get in there and they didn't really test you.
At all.
And you go, oh, okay.
It makes you question the people that you work with.
Well, it does, but also it's like, then when you get in there and actually perform it and do a good job, they go, oh, like they didn't even know how to utilize you until you show them. Yeah. Which shows that if you're not a go-getter, extra achiever, or maybe you have so much going on in the rest of your life that you don't have the extra, to give to your work, especially without knowing what they're expecting. And because they didn't test you and basically show you what they want you to know, right? they interviewed you and asked you questions, but you don't know what they wanted to hear. You might have tried to tell them that, but you don't really know what they were looking for or what they want to see in you. And so it's like, on an individual basis, everybody needs to be tested. Like, it's ridiculous not to. And that's where people get equal opportunity employment turns into everybody sucks, and people worm their way into positions they're not supposed to have all the time. And it's not easy, or it's not hard to worm your way into one position and then, okay, that doesn't work, let me worm my way into another position, because you're able to worm in anywhere. And you could just keep that going as long as you really want. But
because imagine if you have a manager with 30 years of manager experience, but they've sucked their whole life at being a manager, and then you have a 20-year-old who's studied how to be a manager and has this idea of how to do it, and they're really good at talking to people. They're just going to look at the person with 30 years and be like, oh, we're just going to choose them because it's a safer bet. It's like, how about we just put them both to the test and see how they both perform?
I like that, because also the idea of challenging somebody for a job or a position, that needs to be much more commonplace.
Yeah. I mean, I the amount of people I've had to hire in my life that I'm like, well, this could either, because it makes you look bad. You're the person who hired them. And it's like,
it's always going to be a risk.
Yeah, but it makes it, I mean, just in my opinion,
but it wouldn't be risks if, here's the data, so now I'm not going to look like an idiot because it's all on paper right here. Yeah. Anybody else would have made this exact same decision. The company decided these were the metrics. I'm just, I'm the manager that's hiring, or, whoever. And it's the right things need to be done. We need to keep track of everything. And so much flies under the radar of what's really supposed to be in a job, right? Or, the standard gets lowered, the workload gets increased. Things just start to go a certain direction,
Yeah.
But corporate America is it's changing, and I think now we're going to start to see that all these new companies are going to just pop up overnight and just cripple the old companies.
Yeah, I agree.
Like SpaceX to NASA.
Yeah,
no comparison.
That's gonna be crazy. Just thinking about the next 4 years, like what that's gonna look like, how fast it's gonna progress. Like it'll be interesting.
I would love to see it. Do you think in 5 years we'll be on Mars?
I'd say it depends on who gets elected after Trump, because I think it's going to take Elon, if they deregulated everything, I think it's going to take about 2.5 to 3 years before he gets like a year and a half away. Like if he was,
if we increased his funding.
Well, I'm saying like, cause you have to test everything, right? And testing stuff takes a while. So I think he gets all of his testing done in 2.5, 3.5 years, but then he has to fine tune everything. I think that takes him a year and a half.
Okay. But look at it like this. All right. Trump in 2016 launched the Space Force, the United States Space Force, which was initially a branch of the Air Force, but then broke off and is now its official owned branch of the military. But there's still sort of a connection with the Space Force. Space Force never really had funding like it should. Their main thing that they do is they control satellites and make sure that communications are intact for all the services that everybody uses, TikTok and all, doesn't matter. They protect all that and do that. Really important job, but overall, the amount of funding that the Space Force has is pretty much nothing. And so they're still being trained, I believe, still like there's one official Space Force base in Florida, I think. And then, because that's the one that Elon uses to launch his SpaceX rockets out of. And then, but for the most part, if you join the Space Force right now, you would be trained at the Air Force Base, which was before this one in Florida was built. It was all being trained through there. And they just don't have a budget. People thought they were a joke for a long time. People still probably don't believe that it's a real thing, or they forgot about it. But it's an important job. It is the future. And if, now that we have Elon involved in Doge directly and he's on board with Trump, those two together, because Trump wants to bring Space Force, invest in it, grow it, and really see it become what it's supposed to be. But it gives Elon the opportunity to not only contribute to the direction that's going in, but also pull resources and sort of unite exploration with utility. Yeah. So we're not just going to places for exploration. We're setting up, and we're almost, it's like we would be able to go to Mars for exploration, because that's going to mean a lot to the human race. but because we're going to set up a satellite array that's going to, you know, let us see further into space in this other projection, read cosmic dangers way before we ever could see them on Earth. Like, there's a real service that we're going to, it's not just to go out and be an astronaut, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, it would just be really awesome to see. And I think it's going to build into something, you know, it's going to be, at first, it's just basically going to be new NASA and satellites and all this stuff. But eventually, I feel like it's going to get into that Halo, Star Wars, Star Trek territory. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm pumped to see it.
It'll be interesting just to see that. I mean, they have the opportunity to really cut out the notion of conspiracy theory. Like, a lot of people don't think we went to the moon, but they have an
I don't.
Well, I'm just saying, like, they have the opportunity just to like solidify, like, we did go to Mars.
Right.
Like,
you could really document this one well.
That's what I'm
There's
saying.
no
Like,
excuse not to.
Yeah, like you could document it to there's no faking it. Because the whole point back then is like, okay, missile technology, we can fake it because then we're just industrializing this whole thing. But now there's so much, like you said, that we can document this, like so much real-time information where you can truly document it and disprove any conspiracy.
Also, am I tripping? Or, okay, so when the moon landing happened, were they trying to say that was a live feed? Because I feel like the American people were like, look, they're on the moon right now. And it's like, clearly you don't even have the technology to do that.
I don't think it was a live feed. It could have been a live feed. I don't think it was. I think what happened was there was the thing where he was actually going and stepping on the moon and saying one small leap, whatever. I think that all happened. But then I think a guy went out with a camera and videoed like them walking off. I think that's like what was.
Truthfully, well, people may have gone to the moon. That's possible. May have happened at some point. But the moon landing video is 100% fake in my eyes. Like, you can, like, I could confidently say that I could prove it to myself.
Well, they could have made that video after the fact because they wanted the American people to see something, like get their money's worth. Like, oh, look.
Well, and that's what they actually say. And now that's the official record, is that they admit that video is not the actual footage of a moon landing. It's actually a studio production. But what I know about it is that it was directed by Stanley Kubrick, the director of The Shining and a bunch of other great movies. But they see, or no, what is it? I don't know, some blanking on the actor's name. It's some cult movie about the Illuminati, basically. But anyway, this guy Stanley Kubrick made a bunch of great movies and everything, but he's always leaving clues back to Apollo. And like, even in The Shining, the kid's wearing an Apollo sweater. And
interesting. I didn't know that.
One of the room numbers in the Stephen King book of The Shining was something. And then in the movie, he changed it to something that reflects the Apollo mission. And like, he was always leaving little hints like that. But then they killed Stanley Kubrick, and he's dead because he was sort of like putting truths out there.
Yeah, all that information just disappeared. Don't know how to get back.
Yeah, we never do we?
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah.
Anything else you have, or you want to wrap it up?
Nah, we pretty much got through all my stuff. So
sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Next time we'll have a lot more interesting. We went through a lot of the more recent stuff just because it's all super cool and awesome. It's all happening right now.
Excited about it.
So yeah.
Cool. All right. Cool. Next time.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you listening.
All right.